Hello everyone, today I'm going to explain some basics concerning game servers and connectivity. This is going to be very simplified, but we'll cover the major concepts in game server hosting and networking. First, we'll explain how network traffic works. Let's say that you have an old PC that you want to turn into a game server, either a local server or a public server through the internet. That PC is connected either through Wi-Fi or Ethernet to your router, which has access to the internet. The router has two addresses, a local IP address that identifies it within the local network, often referred to as the default gateway, and a public IP address that identifies it on the internet. Now let's get back to the old PC, which will host our server. It will have a unique local IP address that identifies it within our local network. Let's say you also have another device, like another PC that you want to connect to the server with, for example in a local server situation. This device will be called a client. It will also have a unique local IP address that identifies it within our local network. Bear in mind that these local clients are not visible to the outer internet yet. We will address that later on. The only device visible to the outer internet is the router with its external IP address. So how do we identify the local IP addresses of our devices? You can do that on Windows by running ipconfig in the command prompt and then looking for the IPv4 address. On Linux, you can use the command ipa and then look for the IPv4 address. Now you'll want to test if your client can find the server on the local network. To do that, you need to send a ping request from one device to the other, either from the client to the server or the other way around. To do that on the client PC, run the command ping and then the IP address of the server. It's the same command for both Windows and Linux-based operating systems. If the command returns a latency, the ping request has completed, and both devices can see each other on the local network. If not, make sure your router doesn't have user isolation enabled. User isolation is a safety measure implemented in many routers that block local devices from communicating with each other. Each router has a specific setting for this, but here's an example of mine. Now we will explain the concept of ports and firewalls. Internet traffic varies in type. Each type is defined in a protocol. For example, web traffic uses HTTP and HTTPS. There's also the file transfer protocol used for downloading files from another IP. There's also the secure shell protocol for remote device login. Each protocol uses a specific tunnel for sending and receiving information of that type. We call that tunnel a port. Here is an example of a client connecting to an internet server using a router. We will explain the firewall part later in the video, so you can ignore that for now. You can see that each device on here has ports: the client, the router, and the internet server. I have only shown 3 ports here, but there are many others. There's more than 40,000 of them. Each port has a unique number identifying it. Examples of common ports include HTTP, port 80, HTTPS, port 443, SSH or Secure Shell, port 22, FTP, port 21. Our game also uses a specific port for its communications. For example, Minecraft uses port 25,565, which is why you probably have seen that number before in some server IPs. Ports can either be opened or closed using what we call a firewall. A firewall manages which types of traffic are allowed to be received and sent. When a port is open, the traffic specific to the port is allowed to pass through. When it is closed, it is not allowed to pass through. Firewalls typically allow all outgoing traffic and block the majority of unsolicited incoming traffic. However, the firewall will not block incoming data that you have requested. It only blocks requests that are unsolicited to you. So for a client to connect to a game server, it needs the IP address of the server, which defines who will receive the traffic, and a port, which defines what type of traffic our server will receive. Here we're going to set up a local server. A local server is only visible to the local clients, and it is not visible to internet users. We'll make the server available to internet users later in the video. To set up a local server, we need to launch our game server program on our server. In our example, it's the old PC, and then open the specific port that defines our game in our server to allow incoming and outgoing traffic. Let's take the example of a Minecraft server. First, launch the server. Here I'm running the Minecraft 1.2.5 server, but it can be any version you want. Now we want to open the game's port. To open the game's port on Windows, first go to the Control panel, then System and Security, then Windows Defender Firewall, then click on Advanced Settings, click on Inbound Rules. Make sure you don't already have any Java rules set. If you have those, delete them. And then add a new rule. Select Port. Now here it depends on your game. Minecraft uses TCP, but some other games use UDP, so you'll have to do some research on your game. You can try first running the server with TCP, and if it doesn't work, switch to UDP. On the specific local ports, write in your game's port. For Minecraft, it's 25,565. Allow the connection. Then keep the checkboxes here checked as it is in the default case. Give the port a name so that you can find it easily. To open the game's port on Linux, install UFW if you don't already have it. On Debian-based distros, run apt install UFW. On Fedora-based distros, run dnf install UFW. And on Arch-based distros, run pacman-s UFW. After installing UFW, run the command UFW allow 25,565. Replace the number 25,565 with your game's port number. Then run the command UFW enable. The client connecting to the server usually doesn't need to be configured, as you already have a standard configuration after launching Minecraft or your game for the first time. If you can already connect to Minecraft servers or your game's servers, you don't need additional configuration as a client. Now note the server's local IP address, then connect to it using the client's PC, as you can see here. And you can see that it works. Now for the fun part, we're going to make the server visible to the outer internet, and this way anyone could connect to it if they have the IP address. To do that, we will use port forwarding. Port forwarding allows us to make a local device visible to the outer internet under the router's public IP. But only the port that has been forwarded will be public, not the other ones. To do this, you'll need to open your router's configuration page. Open a browser and enter the router's local IP in your URL. If you don't know what your router's local IP is, you can find it by running the command ipconfig in Windows, and your router's IP will be under default gateway. Or in Linux, running the command iproute, then look out for the default IP. Open your router's configuration page and log in. Many routers use the credentials admin as username and admin as the password for the default combination. Then find the port forwarding section. When you find it, add a port forward section. The local IP to be forwarded should be the server's local IP address. The allowed ports should start and end with 25,565, depending on your game. If the game uses any other ports, add them there. Make sure to avoid adding other ports for safety unless you know what you're doing. Your server's IP will be the same as your router's public IP, so do not share this IP with people you don't trust, as they can get your location from it. If that happens, you can reboot your router and your public IP will change. You could buy a domain name pointing to your public IP address with services like Cloudflare to help hide your IP. Now to test if your port is open to the internet, go to the site canyouseeme.org and enter port 25565 or whatever port you have forwarded. If the test is successful, it means people can see your server and connect. The IP shown on this page is your public IP, and anyone that has this IP can connect to your game server now.